Hello, friends. Tia, your San Francisco Bay Area luxury specialist here. We are here talking today about the buyer experience, continuing on. Today, we're going to focus on making an offer, getting an offer accepted, and what your next steps are after you've got your offer accepted. I'd like to remind you to like and subscribe. Please tell your friends. We're going to have a lot of great content coming up. We're going to have lenders, we're going to have escrow officers, we're going to have an investor come and talk with us about what it's like to invest and also what some strategies are for investing in real estate once you have your own home. So please do like and subscribe for more of this great content. And also don't forget to comment. I'd love to hear what your experiences are, and I'd love to hear what you'd like to hear about. Are there any aspects of moving to Oakland that are of interest to you, or anything else to do with real estate and living in Oakland and the San Francisco Bay Area? So please do comment, like, and subscribe. So let's do it. Let's jump into making an offer. So at this point, we've already crafted our great Dear Seller letter. We have our pre-approval. We have our offer documents and a sense of how much money we're going to put down, who's going to pay for closing costs. I should circle back to that again. So we were talking about the idea of closing costs, and that closing costs on average can be about 3% of the purchase price. So they can go up if you're talking about an FHA loan, which is usually for property of a lower dollar amount. And they can go down if you have a really great, like, 0 point loan, meaning no origination fee, no points going into your purchase. Most of the loans nowadays are pretty lean. There's not a lot of fees and that sort of thing attached to them, just given the circumstances, and that ends up being great for buyers. We're getting a lot of great opportunities. So if you can get pre-approved, you're probably getting a great deal as far as your loan is concerned, and you're certainly getting a great deal as far as your interest rate. And I know that that's something that everybody knows, is that interest rates are unbelievable now, historical lows. Even if you're only going to be in the home 5 years, but certainly if you're going to be in the home 30 years, people who bought their homes back in the 80s cannot believe the kind of interest rates that first-time home buyers are getting now. I mean, you're talking about, in some cases, sub 3%, but certainly anything below 5% is outstanding. And because back in the 80s, they were in the double digits. You know, they were talking 10, 12, 13%. And I know in a lot of European countries, interest rates in the teens are very common. So we're very, very lucky to be in an environment now where we can have such low interest rates. And of course, that's really boosting the market, and it's really helping people who are making some decisions now as to where they want to be. And that's why you're seeing such an active market as well. It's both the fact that interest rates are very low, but a lot of people are looking at it, and maybe in the back of their mind they were thinking, well, maybe I do want to move to Portland, or maybe I do want to move out of San Francisco. And that's mostly what we're seeing in Oakland, is an out migration out of San Francisco, out of the small places that they can afford in San Francisco, because San Francisco is very pricey. It's small geographically, and it's a huge employment center. So supply and demand, you've got very little inventory and a lot of people that want to be near all those great employment centers. So as a result, San Francisco ends up being, and Silicon Valley end up being, very, very expensive places to try to purchase property. So the entire East Bay, meaning Oakland, Berkeley, well, and certainly Berkeley has always been very strong because of the university, but Oakland, Berkeley, San Leandro, El Cerrito, Albany, swinging out that way, and even all the way up to Vallejo. So I do have clients in Vallejo as well, because then you're going to start to hit some of those affordable properties. So going up the 80, you're going to be moving out through El Cerrito, Albany, Richmond, San Pablo, Pinole, Hercules, all these cute little towns, all the way up to the Carquinez Bridge, and once you cross that into the Vallejo area. And then you're also seeing it out the 24. So once you hit Oakland, you go through the Caldecott Tunnel, you'll hit the La Miranda area, which is Lafayette, Moraga, Orinda, and on out to Pleasant Hill. Then you hit Concord, Walnut Creek, and if you keep on going, you'll hit Pittsburgh and Antioch. And as you move out on each of these different veins through the Bay Area, the property tends to get more inexpensive, so less expensive. The only one where that doesn't work is the 680 corridor and the 880 corridor. And as you can see, the San Francisco Bay Area is most easily described by the freeways that bisect it. So as you move down the 880 corridor from Oakland, you're moving closer to Silicon Valley. So you have people who've come across from your San Mateo, Brisbane, all of your South Bay communities into Hayward, San Leandro, places like that where the property again is less expensive. But then if you continue down 880, you hit Fremont, which has gone through the roof. And if you continue down 880, you end up in San Jose, which is yet another huge employment center with very, very expensive property. So that's kind of the Bay Area in a nutshell. I know we were going to talk about making an offer, but I just wanted to give you a sense of what the San Francisco Bay Area is about, and why we have so many expensive properties here. We are geographically contained or constrained by the bay. It's a beautiful, beautiful bay. You have amazing views and wonderful communities and cultures and that sort of thing. But the geographical constraints that are put upon the land by the water make it so that you have little communities that are kind of surrounded by water on three sides, like San Francisco, or surrounded by water on two sides, which is much of the South Bay. So that's where you get these very, very expensive home prices from. So anywho, we've got you prepared. We've narrowed down the properties. We're making an offer. So what we'll do strategically is we'll try to figure out how many packages out. That's a phrase that you'll hear. That means disclosure packages. Now, one change I want to share with you in this market is that the number of packages is much higher than normal because most people are sheltering in place to some extent or the other. So people are, it's not common for properties to have 20, 30, 50, 100 disclosure packages out. Also, in the past, these disclosure packages used to be paper. So you'd have to actually be handing people 200 and 300 sheets of paper. That's not the case anymore, of course. They're emailed as a PDF document. And most agents are educating their buyers to say, you really don't have to read all 200 pieces of paper right now. When you're looking at a property to make an offer on it, concentrate on the home inspection report if there is one. Concentrate on the pest report if there is one. I love the pest report because it focuses on termite, powder post, and dry rot. All of which are things that can be remediated. But they're very important to know because if you leave them and don't do anything about them, eventually the house is not going to fare well. So you want to be able to know what the issue is. They're all easily correctable. But what happens is, so I'll talk about each one. Dry rot, that's moisture. Moisture sits on top of wood. Most homes are made of wood, and it eats its way through the paint, and then it starts to eat its way through the wood. The number way to remediate that is to paint your property regularly. And if you buy a house with some dry rot, just pull that piece of wood off and put a fresh one there and paint that piece of wood or stain it. But, paint is usually number one. As far as pests are concerned, powder post are a little bit more of a pain in the butt. Those usually require tenting, and it's not a big deal. Just costs a couple grand. They'll put a tent over the property. They'll fumigate, and then they're gone. So that's the end of the story. Rarely do we find powder post, but if we do, I always recommend that people take care of it before they move in the property, because the seller's moving out, you're moving in. There's probably going to be some period of time where the home is vacant. Let it be vacant for a week. The guys will come in and tent it, or guys or ladies, or both will come in and tent it, let's say Monday, Tuesday, and by the next Monday, Tuesday, it's ready for you to move into. So, again, something that's easily remediated, but we want to know, because if not, they're just going to eat their way through the house in 20 or 30 years, okay? And then the third and final is termite. The way that I've had this explained to me by termite gentlemen is that termites swarm. They have life phases, right? And so there's one phase when they're kind of wormy, and then there's another phase where they kind of look more like flies, and that's the swarm season, and that is I don't know when it is. It's the spring or the summer or something. And they basically fly around and look for tasty houses to set upon and start eating their way through. And unfortunately, painting, staining, all of these things that we do to make our houses look nice and to protect them from termites really don't work. Eventually, termites find their way through them. So every time a home changes hands, we take a look at the status of those to see if we can't knock them back a little bit. So that's basically why you're always going to see a pest report or a request for one or discussion of one. And again, this is information for you and your agent and for the seller and their agents. This has nothing to do with the lender, unless it's a VA loan. And that's another reason that VA loans tend to be very not competitive, because there's always something on the pest report. And a VA loan requires that the pest report be cleared prior to the home being able to be sold. So that's the only thing that sometimes gets in the way of a VA buyer. Again, can be remediated. That's why you want a good agent, because these issues can be worked out. But it is something that has to be dealt with prior to close of escrow. So if you have your reports, again, your pest report, as we've discussed, or a home inspection, and another one that I like to look at in that big disclosure package is if there might be an agent's visual inspection. Agent's visual inspection reports are required on transactions, and a lot of times the agent has an eye for things that need to be disclosed, because the seller may, one, not have an idea what needs to be disclosed, and two, not want to disclose it. Not to say that they're dishonest, but they're just, want to sell their home and don't want to focus on the negative. So if you look at that home inspection report, that pest report, and the agent's visual report, if there is one, it'll give you a good sense of what the home is, what's going on with the home prior to making your offer. And there was one other thing that I wanted to say about the pest report, which is the pest report's the only report that's going to have estimates on it. Now, these estimates are inflated. They can be inflated by 50%. Or 100%, because yourself, if you do something yourself, or if you get a friend to do it, or if you get a handyman that'll cut you a good deal, that's going to beat certainly getting a contractor to do it. But the reason why I think it's very useful to have those inflated estimates on the pest report is you can kind of look at that as a ceiling, that it's not going to cost too much more than what they've estimated on this pest report. So it'll give you a sense, okay, if we fixed everything and made it perfect, like new construction perfect, this is how much it would cost me. And then it becomes the basis for negotiation if you haven't waived those contingencies. You can always ask, but if you've waived contingencies, it's going to make it a little bit harder for you to be able to try to negotiate based on condition. And then certainly if reports were provided up front, because they're not always provided up front. So I don't want to give you the sense that you're always going to have a completely full disclosure package when you're making an offer on a property. Some sellers can't afford to do reports, don't want to, and that's their right. And hopefully their agent has let them know then that there's going to be negotiation based on condition, because they did not disclose the issues that are going on with the home prior to the buyers making their offer. So at this point, you have a sense of what it's like to make an offer, some of the considerations that go into making an offer, and some of the issues that you're going to want to discuss with your agent as you're making an offer and strategizing. Everyone has a constraint as far as price is concerned. So there are other aspects that you can do to make your offer stronger. And a lot of it has to do with removing those contingencies, but it can be also shortening those contingencies. It can be, as I said, a great seller letter. And, I have actually seen sellers that have picked a lower offer based on having something in common with the buyer that was not known ahead of time but was disclosed in the seller letter. So just bear it in mind. It depends on the seller, but that can be a powerful thing. And it can certainly get your foot in the door when maybe you were deficient on price to get that callback. Because your agent, and that's one thing, another thing that I would say in terms of the offer and summing it up as far as the offer process is concerned, is you want to take these things into consideration. You want to take into consideration how many offers are being made. You want to take into consideration the condition of the property. You want to take into consideration your budget, and you want to take into consideration, and hopefully you did it in the beginning when you were picking your agent, is how hard are they going to fight for you once you craft that offer? Because that's really where you need the agent, because you can climb in and out of properties all day, but what you really need is a strong negotiator who will go to bat and not necessarily fight with the person on the other side, but come up with strategies to help you get your foot in the door, because that's what you're trying to do. You want to get your piece of the rock. You want to get a property, because at least if you've bought the property, then you can rent out a room if something happens and your available cash goes down. You can rent it out and try Portland, or rent it out and try Texas, or any other options, many of the other options that are available to you when you've actually purchased a property. So that would be my recommendation. That's an overview of what it's like making an offer on a property. Please like and subscribe, because our next video is going to be about escrow and what to expect during escrow, your escrow process, appraisal process, getting your loan approval, and the closing process, which is a little confusing because lender calls one thing closing and escrow calls another thing closing, and the agent probably calls something yet a third thing it's closing, which is probably when they get their paycheck. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.